Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoding, and let's have a quick look at trapezoidal doors. Now here are a few examples from South America. You'll find them in Egypt, but pretty much across the world. And we'll go back to this one for a moment because, well, a lot gets attached to it. Could be, symbolically and other reasons, but there are a few very practical reasons why these are beneficial. Now, this would be an excellent example because notice how the blocks, the lines connecting them, tilt upwards. They're sort of pointing up. Now, the wall wants, by making it trapezoidal, the walls want to collapse in on themselves. They want to come and meet in the middle. But by tilting these upwards, you're opposing those forces and you're strengthening the walls. All of the stone builders, ancient times up until, were considering factors. They understood that stones shifted, not just large earthquakes, but small earthquakes over time would shake and ruin stone. So a lot of stones, even that are now called rectangular and not, let's say, polygonal, actually are polygonal in that sense that they're individually fitted blocks with very slight curves. They look to the eye to be rectangular with 90-degree angles, but that's just actually not the case. They're individually fitted, but this is one practical reason why you would want, because the forces of a wall are also pushing in. So by using a trapezoid door like this and arranging the blocks to tilt up slightly, the force that's pushing in is being opposed by the weight of the stones and them pushing out. So that's at least one practical reason for them. But there's another very good one, and that's like, this is a temple of Khonsu in Karnak, and so you have your very obvious trapezoid. Sometimes they're very gentle, but this one especially is showing another. Essentially, it's an optical illusion, and by having the base taper in, you're creating a false perspective, and you're adding grandeur and height to the buildings. We'll have a look at that. But Temple of Bacchus in Baalbek, in Lebanon. So many just amazing Roman temples there, and they get overlooked. And I'll do that a separate one, because the trilithons, we'll do that separately. But we have this large trapezoid doorway, and it's not really a keystone, but let's just call it a keystone for a moment. This has actually been lifted up and put back in place, repaired. I'll show you a picture of that in a moment, but this is another example of a trapezoid doorway. Now, unlike ancient Egypt, South America, we have some really nice records on the proportions of these particular doors. And so this is a Roman temple. Romans could build these temples. It's just anyway, let's not get into that. It's a silly argument. 10 Books of Architecture by Vitruvius, which is just an amazing guidebook. Book 4, Chapter 7, The Doorways of Temples. And I'll try to remember to put a link in the description to this. Download the PDF, store it somewhere, print it out. It covers so much ancient knowledge in there. And the Greeks and the Romans, as they admit themselves, they studied in Egypt in places like Heliopolis. But here we see an illustration. This is not from you. This is there, because what Vitruvius in that book describes is how to create the proportions of these doorways, including the lintels and the door jamb and all those other features. And he also talks about, for instance, an ionic doorway versus a Doric doorway. Doric and Ionic columns, the capitals there at the top, that's not the only feature that defines whether it's a Doric or an Ionic or an Attic style of temple, because it's the way that the temples are decorated, not just the columns, the proportions are there. And he lays out the proportions of how to design these doorways according to either Doric or Ionic. And there we just see a comparison of the Temple of Vesta in Tivoli and the Temple of Roma and Augustus as well. So with these, so it's not just a Temple of Baalbek. This is a standard design to have these types of doorways. And if we compare that to the Egyptian style, we can start to see some really clear and immediate similarities in there. However, so we compare that to the Temple of Bacchus, and we've got the same thing going on now. Even if this doorway was squared, we're still getting the appearance of a tapered trapezoid doorway by the way that these supports on either side bring themselves in together, and this, especially on very large doorways, gateways such as this, the optical illusion created by them adds to the grandeur, adds to the mystery and the impressive sight. So as you approach, but the key point is as you approach, but then as you really enter and as you walk under the doorway, the full effect appears. I'll show you in a moment, but it's an optical illusion, and it's something that temple designers of the past understood and used very well. The use of perspective and other illusions to bring them in. So a brilliant example of this is the Parthenon. Apart from the column drums being perfectly flat to fit together, there are no straight lines on the Parthenon. These are not built of rectangular blocks. These are built of individually fitted, slightly curved blocks. So they're using the polygonal masonry style to strengthen them, but by making the appearance of rectangular blocks, they've also added a whole bunch, like a new level of design on top of that compared to older structures. And here is an example of, so by using the appearance of rectangular blocks, they're not rectangular, they're not quite polygonal masonry, individually fitted pieces, but what they've done by arranging the blocks at certain heights and certain scales, they've actually created an optical illusion. Now, if you pause for a moment, how high is this line and how high is that line? Which is the taller line? Most people are going to say, well, obviously it's the one here on the right. That's at least twice as high. Well, no, it's not. They're actually the same height. And this is one of the illusions they do to create harmony, but also to trick the eye and to make the temple, it's not just a random room now, it's actually giving us a sense of grandeur and mystery, and it's almost like an Ames window, I suppose you would say as well, but of course it's not moving. But this is one of the common methods that the master architects of the past, the temple builders, used. So it wasn't just a ceremony with the incense and the singing and the musicians and the big polished bits of copper-lined walls with the sun shining off. They understood how to apply optical illusions and perspective to add to the grandeur of these particular buildings. So just like this drawing, it looks like, that's a drawing. And if you understand the tricks, you can create illusions just like this. And that's what's happening with it now in regards to those trapezoidal doors. Now, you see a long road. Now, the road width here close to you is exactly the same as where it comes down to a 0 point at the thing. It's perspective. That's all that it is. And that's what's happening with trapezoidal doors. So as you approach, it just looks like a little bit trapezoid, but as you walk underneath, so this is what you would see as you walk directly underneath. The temple is impressive enough, and as you walk up the steps, and then when you walk close to the door, and then as you're walking and the door opens and you're going through the gateway, you get a perspective. So it's like a trapezoidal door. It makes the gateway appear larger. So the door's just huge and amazing on its own, but with this added perspective, it makes the door look even larger because it's tapered in. It's giving just like a road going off into the distance. It makes the doorway appear that way too. Now, for instance, here I've just that's a pure square door, and there we have a trapezoid door. And even imagine them being 40, 50 feet high. It's going to be amazing on its own. But As you approach the squared door, it's going to get rid of the floor for a moment. So as you're approaching, the door's going to appear to tilt. And as you get closer and closer and walk underneath it, your perspective, your view of that door is going to change. And already you can start to see a perspective. So that's a perfectly square door. But as you get further and further into the doorway, it starts to appear trapezoidal. It gives it that sense of perspective. Now, if you compare that to a trapezoid door, already it's giving that, as you get closer and closer, it's giving that idea of perspective and making it look even larger than what it is, as if it's reaching up into the heavens. And as you approach, because of the tapering of the door itself, it gives a very strong sense of perspective. And so especially as you're walking there underneath, it makes like it's tapering, it makes it look much larger than what it actually is, just like a roadway. So those doors are the same size, a little bit of perspective, and then it's exactly the same size, height, and then that adds to it. So this is, along with other optical illusions that the architects would put into their buildings, such as this, the use of simple perspective just applied properly, and this is one of the reasons. We could add other sort of you could take it, stretch it out really far, but just in the pure pragmatic sense, whether it's actually a tapered door or whether it's even a squared off door, but just with slight tapering of the supports, it gives that appearance of it as well. But it's also a trick that artists use, because it also draws the eye in. Our eyes are sort of accustomed to look for patterns, and artists will often use it in paintings, and they'll have features on the side of a painting that, whether it's a feather or a pen on a desk, or a beam of light coming in through the window, that will guide your eye to what they want you to see. And so especially with Egyptian doors, for instance, as you come in and you look up, you'll see the important emblems and the important features in there. So you have this, multiple layers, just very clever architecture, and you're taking something and making it more than what it is. It's that really clever, like the ancients, with very simple tools, they could do amazing things. They could make more of it than what would appear to us, and so for the untrained person, this door would blend to look at the power of the king, look at the power of the priests to do these things. These doors reach up into the heavens. They seem to disappear off in the distance. And the secrets of the trade, so there's that being able to manipulate minds to get power and make it seem grander than what it is, but also it saves, because rather than build a 60-foot door and cost you really, heaps of money, build a 30-foot door and taper it a little bit, and you'll still get the same effect. So trapezoid doors, links in the description to Vitruvius, because he talks about the different orders of architecture and the different proportions, and again he's very specific on how wide, high, all of these things could be to maximize it, depending on whether it's Doric, Ionic, or the Attic style of temple. But again, 10 books of Vitruvius, 10 books of architecture by Vitruvius. It's not just about design. There's also machines, chemistry / alchemy, and other features in this. If it's ancient knowledge, ancient mysteries, most of them are answered there. All right, cheerio. Have a good one.